it's Phil again, and this time I'm going to talk to you about frames and what they are basically as the foundation to this whole lore guide site. So if you go up to frames and you click on that tab, you'll start to get a bit of information about what we're trying to do with them and what they represent, as well as a listing of all the frames that we have put in so far. Would recommend starting with the frame concept page, which introduces you to some of the different sites and sources of external content and information that have been particularly informative and inspiring to us in putting this together. There's some wonderful resources that hopefully will give you a sense of where we're trying to go and why. There are also some of the sources of information because they deal with so many great lists of ideas that we've drawn from to populate the actual frames that we've been using. But starting with the general concepts frame, which is a good one to start because it actually lays out, kind of as an index, all of the different frames. The frames are the ones listed in capital letters that we are working on, and most of which have been uploaded but not all of them. You can find that out by seeing which ones represent active links. But a given frame is effectively a visual or graphic layout of ideas. We have the ideas arranged categorically in the website, but we wanted to do something visual as well that was more useful as a tool for us in organizing the content, but also in giving people a different way of accessing or finding connections in the community. What we've done to make them consistent is identified 8 broad categories, these ones that go around the perimeter, and even though that they don't represent a perfect picture of the complexity and the interconnectedness of the systems that make up our community, I hope they're a pretty good start. They've been useful for us in terms of allowing us to maintain consistency from frame to frame. But so for any one of these broad areas starts to get a little bit more specific, but still keeps it relevant to other disciplines, so that somebody coming into the work we're doing or coming into a given frame that wants to learn about, say, community relations, where the terms start to get a bit more nuanced, a bit more specific. If they're coming at it, say, from an economic standpoint, they can still find a term that might be more familiar to them or might be particularly interesting. Maybe they've heard about it but didn't know much. For instance, community benefit, where that's an active link that we put the content in for, gives a chance to really read about that, identify the concept to a degree that we're talking about the same thing, we can truly hold it in common, and that itself has a number of ideas that are closely related to it, so that what we find in the sidebars are the results of a search that looks for other content that has as many of these same topics in common as possible. So this becomes then that entry point to making connections with local organizations, stories, what have you. So going back to the frame, not all of these ideas have indeed have yet been input. Let's see, the ones that haven't, you can still find out what they are by going down to the key in the bottom left, which will give you a link, for instance, to say Wiser Earth, where all these green topics have come from. Wiser Earth is an example of a site that has done a fantastic job of also somewhat relationally organizing vast sets of ideas they're working to do globally with nonprofits, what we're trying to do locally in our community, where they have these different general areas, and you can go in and dive into an area, say like sustainable agriculture, and again, get a definition, get a sense of what it relates to, and once you've educated yourself about it outside of the site, you could come back to Lore Guide and do a simple search for it and still find your way to it. But the reason we wanted to go ahead and get these ideas laid out as it is now is because it's a useful tool for us. Not only is it a way for people to find ideas of interest and then let that be their gateway into the site. For us, as we're putting in terms into the website, like community benefit, for instance, it's a valuable way for us to quickly identify the related terms by looking at um, a particular frame that corresponds to it and visually quickly identifying these terms that we don't all necessarily have memorized. And so in the same way, what we're using this as is a system that we can put in front of an organization or a group of people with a particular interest, and whether you basing it off of an existing frame or starting one from scratch for their interest area, we can begin to populate it with the ideas that they care about, that relate most to our community, that we're trying to educate the community about. And by laying them out in this way, we can link them more readily to other ideas that we've already identified, and also begin to ask then, what are the stories in our community, for instance, that best illustrate energy conservation or sustainable design? Where can we go to inform ourselves as locally as possible, so that, again, when we click on a particular piece of content, a particular idea, it immediately brings us examples from our community that can take that connection a step further. So I hope that's a useful starting point. Um, we'd love your feedback, whether it's positive or negative. It'll help us. This is very much a work in progress, an evolving website, and we'll take all the help we can get. If you want to help us add in content or add some expertise behind the scenes, we'd love to hear from you. You can email us at loreguide@transitionbushland.org or contact us however it works. And thanks for looking through this, and please do surf through the site and see what jumps out to you. There's a lot of content here. We've only begun to scrape the surface of the content in the community, but